All right, welcome to Mr. Miller's Woodshop podcast. I am your host, Bobby Miller. Weed in the Woodshop. I got you on that little clickbait, and I'll talk about that here at the end of the show, but I want to talk about the first couple weeks. I'm sitting here on a Friday afternoon. Safety training is done. We've had a lot of fun. We've learned some new things. I've done some new things, and I'm excited to talk about that. First, we don't have a sponsor this week. If you're interested in sponsoring, reach out. But more importantly, please make sure to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it from. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm also on YouTube and, of course, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube podcasts. Talk about a few things today. It's Friday afternoon as I'm sitting here, and it's been an awesome couple of weeks. It's probably been the busiest back to school couple weeks that I've ever had, just because of the new things that I'm trying to implement and the ambition that I want to bring to my class from everything I learned over the summer has caused me to change some things and add some things. And so just want to go over that, but it's so exciting being back in the classroom. I truly love what I do. There's a lot of teachers that are still kind of, mourning the loss of their summer, and I get that too. I would probably be mourning that too if I didn't also have to work all summer. So I definitely feel that. But I want to talk about some former students who had dropped in. I wrote a new safety test utilizing AI software, talk about that, some of the logistics of the shop class, just trying to pay it forward to the teachers that are listening. I'll talk about what I'm doing next week, so any students that are listening, you guys can get a little inside baseball, what's going on. Lumber order, first cuts, and then I'll talk about what went on in the wood shop when I came back after teaching in the computer lab. So I suppose we'll start out. Getting to know the students is always super fun. A lot of times kids come in, they're kind of nervous, but if they've got some connection to me that I don't know about, I love it when you guys come up and tell me. And usually it's, oh, you had my brother, or my friend had you last year. This is the first time I've had the case where a kid came up to me and said, hey, you had my uncle. And I said, no, that can't be right, because I haven't been teaching long enough and I'm not old, and so that can't be right. He's like, no, my uncle's only 7 years older than me. He said he had you at Cambridge High School, and I'm not going to share the name here because I don't know if they're cool with that, but it was so cool, and reached out to them over Instagram, and that was a fun little connection, and it's like, wow, all right. But that's where I think the power of Instagram can just be so, and social media in general. LinkedIn, I'm discovering, is a really powerful tool too. But just continue that connection, and so that's really cool. I actually just had a student drop in about an hour ago. He had a project he'd been working on. I can't remember if it was for school or personal, but he's a student at the U of M right here in Minnesota, and working through it and trying to go above and beyond, and needed something printed out, and I'm happy to help, of course. And I posted on Instagram a picture of him and I. It was cool to connect. He only graduated 2 years ago. He's, what would that put him, a sophomore, I guess, sophomore or junior in college. But I graduated from the U too in 2014, and so it was fun to talk about things. He's filled me in on some of the changes that went on there, but just the camaraderie that I've gotten with some of these students of mine who have graduated and went on to bigger and brighter, and they come back and share their knowledge or what they're doing. And this was a student who I guess he was primarily in woodshop, but the project he needed help with was in the graphics lab, and I also teach down there, so I helped him out there. But also kind of funny too, our process for paying for material here is I don't take any money, I just take receipts from the finance department. And so they pay the finance department, they get a receipt, and it's a 2-ply receipt. And so they sign the front of it, and then the copy goes on directly to the back. And I want that one in the back. And so that's really hard for students to understand, just describing like I've just done here. And so I've got a visual of that in my desk. So when kids ask, what do I got to do? I pull out that visual receipt for them, and it's this kid's name that's on there. So, or this young adult now, college student, his name. And so that's just kind of cool. I told him about that and filled him in on some of the updates that we had around here in the wood shop, and how I've brought a lot of my teaching methods from the wood shop into graphics, and turned out I actually really like teaching graphics now because I've used this method where I really used to just count the seconds of when I got to come back to the wood shop whenever I was in graphics. So that was kind of neat. Kind of on that note too, when I leave the wood shop, I usually leave it locked up and can't get in, can't get out kind of thing. So that just kind of makes what I'm going to talk about here soon that much funnier. Talked about that panel saw that we got, the SR5U from Safety Speed Manufacturing out of Ham Lake, Minnesota. Figuring that out, got it all set up. That takes a little bit of time as you're starting to think about it, not just how to use it, but how to use it well with kids. It's a little bit more challenging, and you got to think about things like, how are these extra pieces going to be stored? Where should they be at? Safety Speed set me up with so many accessories. I had to basically take out a whole shelf of one of our storage lockers and kind of just make that the panel saw accessory shelf. And it still doesn't fit everything. I got the saw and router combination machine, and so I've got the router head still sitting there, and kind of just exploring too, or testing out, like, can this expensive router head just sit out? And Safety Speed makes a nice stand that they sent along with it, and it's kind of nice because it's got their logo on it. It's a Milwaukee router on there, so it looks just crisp and clean and new, and it's kind of parked between some of the older machines. One was a table router that was homemade here at Coon Rapids back in the I think it was in the 90s because it was before my predecessor started, so maybe it's 80s, but I mean, it's a shop that's been around a while. Our joiner is from 1963, and that's kind of fun to think about. I'll probably still be here when that thing reaches 100 years old, and I'm maintaining it well enough to where I hope that it actually reaches 100 years. But so it got the new saw, and we've had a panel saw forever. It's their 82 model, and I've never taught a full-on safety demonstration on it. I probably should have, because we use them pretty often in our exploring construction class, kind of our intro to our construction classes here at Anoka Hennepin schools. And so it's in general, a panel saw, a very safe saw to use. It's hard to get your fingers back there. There's some tips and tricks to do so well. And so I would go over those, but it would kind of just be organically in the hum of operation. This is the first time I went through and actually gave a safety lecture on it, and it only took maybe a half hour, but it was kind of fun too, because I've taught on the same machines now for quite some time and deviated a little bit, but I've kind of fallen into that rehearsed kind of, as soon as I'm ready to go on the bandsaw safety lecture, like, I know it's going to take about a half hour. I'm going to need these boards cut out to size. I'll need a clamp. I'll need the test that goes with it next to me to reference off of, and the kids get that notes and they follow along. And so when I set up for the panel saw, I had kids gather around like usual. They had their chairs, their pencils, their binders. I had a test that another teacher shared with me, John Almos at Blaine, shared the panel saw safety test he uses. And so I kind of went off that and didn't read too much of it before I started, because the busyness of running through, 3 preps, 3 different classes, 2 different classrooms, it just doesn't lend itself to that much time. And I'm proficient in the machine, and so I felt confident based on my abilities of using the machine and just public speaking to get through it. But not having done an original safety lecture in probably coming up on 5 years here, it was different territory for me. Usually I'll get everybody quiet and listening by just using the machine, and the kids that are usually the chatty people or the talkers are distracted, all of a sudden hear that motor go on and see that blade spinning and the wood getting cut, and they think, oh, all right, oh, okay, he must be starting, I better listen. And so by the time I shut the machine off after the cut, I usually have all eyes on me, and I'll say something cheesy like, and that's the table saw. Any questions? And pause for some dramatic effect, and then giggle a little bit. I'm usually the only one laughing, but then I'll go through the anatomy of the machine, talk about the business end being the saw blade or the sandpaper or router bit, whatever I kind of start there and kind of move out. And being that this is the first time I taught on the panel saw, and there are so many accessories available to panel saws now, and Safety Speed got me every one of them, I kind of went down some rabbit holes and kind of covered a couple of the questions in the test and some of the things that I talked about, how the panel saw can be accurate within a 32nd of an inch, contradicted the safety test that I was gifted by my friend John. So I had to do some correction, at least how I teach it and how we'll use our new saw compared to how he uses his saw. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and so it's just kind of a funny thing that occurred organically. So kids were kind of left scratching their heads like, so what is it? And of course I answered the question, made it clear right there that, I didn't design this test. I designed a different test for them online, but they will have to utilize that later on. So that was just kind of a funny thing. Then I got to the questions, went through the questions, and then I did a couple rip cuts, couple cross cuts. They've got a midway fence available as an attachment accessory, and I think they can go on some of you folks who have shops and panel saws. Just reach out to them. Like, they retrofit some of their old saws, and when Brian Donahue toured this place last spring, he looked and was like, yep, that's the 82 model. And I joked with their production manager, Travis, who was coming through too. I was like, you guys make them too good. We never have to buy new stuff from you. And so that's why they last so long. But if you're interested, just reach out. They're such a great company, and their accessories truly make the machine. And that's where I went down the rabbit hole, because I'm excited about it. We've got all these extra safety features, and so I'm trying to go through them, and it's contradicting what's on the test. And I usually have paper copies of the test, and they're I shouldn't say loosely, they're pretty close to the digital version. But for the digital, I have multiple choice questions. And so it's kind of hard when, I ask them to explain it on the paper, but then in digital, it's multiple choice. And it's just the ease of grading 100 safety tests at the end of the safety unit. It saves me time when the computer can do it. It can be more accurate than me, because the computer has never failed yet. I've failed plenty of times. Oh, they didn't have the right checkbox, or they are missing one, or they wrote their name wrong. If they don't do it digitally correctly, it also doesn't save correctly on Google Form. And so I'll have the case where a kid is like, I've passed every one at 100%. And I'm like, no, you don't. I don't have any record of you doing it. And then we'll go in and I'll search, and like, oh, you wrote 4th hour, which is funny because I don't have a class 4th hour. And he's like, oh, okay. So I do have to go redo them? And I said, no. But in the future, pay attention to those details, not just on Google Forms, but in your woodworking, in your craft, in your everyday life. The details matter. It's going to set you above, and it'll avoid conversations like this one that we're having that's started out kind of testy. And I've talked about my safety unit a little bit, and it's really fun being on the other side of it now, because the big labor-intensive thing now is lectures, but getting set up as a new teacher, I remembered having to dictate the tests, and I've been pretty computer savvy since I've started, and so I've stayed on Google Forms. I'll use that dictation tool so that I can get done a little bit faster. However, since I had this baseline test, and I actually had the digital version of it too, but only a Microsoft Word document, I asked one of our coaches here, our academic coaches. We've got 4 of them here in the building, and it's really cool. I've worked in small districts and big districts. I'm in a big district now, the biggest in the state, in fact, and we've got coaches to help us teachers with things like this. And I'd gotten behind the ball because of how busy we've been just these first few weeks and the little time we've gotten to prep. I hadn't written this thing digitally, and so I didn't have it set up for auto grading, and I wanted it from Microsoft Word to a Google Form. And so I reached out to the coach and I said, hey, do you have any time to transcribe this onto a Google Form? And she said, yeah, no problem. When do you need it? And I kind of laughed. I'm like, I need it tomorrow. And it was the afternoon, and she's like, oh boy, okay, well, I can't make that happen, which is understandable 100%. Okay, not ragging on them whatsoever, because it was my own, ambition, but then also dereliction where I didn't have everything lined up, I'm human too. But then she told me about this AI software to take a Microsoft Word or any document and turn it into a Google form. And so I added that to my browser, got that going, and followed the prompts and uploaded the document and hit generate. And this thing generated the test for me and transcribed all the questions, which is what I wanted them to do. That's all I wanted them to do, by the way, because I wanted to change some of them like I was talking about. Had to change some of the format of the questions, from multiple choice to true, false, and check boxes, things like that. But, I'd say it did probably 80% of the work I needed to do that afternoon, and I got it done before the end of contract time. I do not stay after contract time 99% of the time. I will for a kid, if they're in crisis, but otherwise I'm going home. I got a family too, and so I'm going to go home to them. And I got it done in that time, whereas if I was doing this like I did back in 2018, 2019 when I was developing these digital tests, it would have taken me probably 2 hours. Instead, it took me maybe 20 minutes. And so I'm grateful for that technology. It's a fearful thing. I'm teaching in graphics right now, and there's a very awesome feature in Adobe Illustrator for them to create the graphic for you, but that misses the entire point of the class. And so if I got any graphics teachers listening, which is very rare, just reach out to me and see how you're handling that Adobe Illustrator artificial intelligence graphic generator button on that software, because I'm stumped. I'll look at a kid, you've had 3 days to design, but I don't think you did that. So I'm currently just having them turn it in as a Adobe Illustrator file, and then I can kind of go in and look through their history of what edits they made. But that is a lot of legwork on my end, and so there'll be some people that fit through the massive cracks in that. So I'm a fan of AI, but still it's changing the way we teach, and I'm on board, but maybe I got one foot on the dock still of the AI boat. So that's kind of the new thing, the exciting thing. Well, I'll go to kind of the boring stuff first. So I got lockers in my room, and I've got certain cleanup jobs, and I kind of get them going by table, and we do a little practice round where they clean the shop after I've gone through the safety lectures, and they basically clean up my mess. And so that's kind of nice because I don't have to clean up my mess. They get practice doing their cleanup jobs, which is just sweeping and foxtail brushes, and I got specific ones for each kid. But that kind of works out nice. We had the biggest lumber order in my career. We've had 1,300 board foot delivered and a good chunk of sheet stock delivered too. And I set that up specifically so that my classes can help unload. We don't have a forklift here at Coon Rapids, which is a bummer. We couldn't really access the Woodshop with it anyway, so it's not like I'm begging anybody for a forklift, but we offloaded all by hand, and the driver was a really good sport. He offloaded every piece by piece, to kids, and it was fun because it's nice out here in Minnesota, and it was like maybe 75 degrees, sunshine. I got a decent post on my Instagram page from this week, September 10th of 2024, if you want to go back, if you're listening to this in the future, go on and see it. But it's fun when you're unloading, because it is a little bit of a break from me talking, and I razz them quite a bit, and it's not featured because I was the one doing a good chunk of the work, but we're sweating, it's sunshine, I got music going in the shop, and so kids bring it into our room where we store our lumber. I call it the lumber yard. And I've got a wonderful volunteer who I station in here during that time, because he can tell the difference for the most part between the wood species, where kids just look at wood and say, oh, that's the regular wood, that's the normal wood. And no, that is not. These are different species of trees. We've all had science class. We got different species of lumber, and so let's get this in the right spot. And that's what my volunteer does in those times, and he breaks a sweat too. He's I guess he's got to be pushing 70, and the kids are good listeners. They understand how to carry the lumber. I usually have some time while the driver is unstrapping his load to kind of describe how you want to carry it on your shoulder, and you don't want to make any sudden turns and jerks, and kind of be funny about that, and pretend like a kid hits his buddy with a board. But I haven't had any trouble with that. I've had some teachers who have seen that video and say, like, I wouldn't trust a single one of my kids to carry lumber like that. And like, why? Like, well, they're just kids. Like, they want to do it. If you tell them to do it, they will do it. And I don't think it's rocket science. And it's very few. It's maybe one or two kids per year that say, nah, I'm not doing that. And then we have a heart-to-heart conversation about, like, this is part of the industry, and it's if it's a medical thing, obviously no. If your leg is broken, sit down and just watch, and you can maybe help out in the lumber yard with helping kids understand what wood they have. But like, it is part of what we do. Every cabinet shop I've worked at, there's a day or a few days a week where you've got to unload the lumber, and it's hard, it's heavy, it's not great, but you kind of get that appreciation too of, like, I'm going to turn this into something great. And so we get the lumber from Rennerberg here in Minnesota. They're just out of St. Cloud, I think, like dead center, middle of the state. So they drive a good chunk to us, but they're really good about getting to us when I have my classes. And I look at price, of course, of what the lumber costs. They don't give us any kind of a discount being a school, but I like it when I ask that salesman, I need you to be here between 7:30 and 9:30. It's very important, because after 9:30, I don't have kids in here until 1 o'clock. I got to check my time here, make sure I'm not going long. I got one more class here. But I tell them I need them here at this time, and some lumber companies are like, yep, no problem, we'll get it there. And they do. And I stick with those, because the ones that don't, if they're late or if they're right on the very edge, like, there's factors involved in there too. I understand traffic. I'm asking them to come an hour away, kind of dead center towards the end of rush hour, which they're not seeing much coming from a rural area to a suburb. You don't see too much, but if that's ever the case too, I mean, that's a big blotch on that. And it's the same, I'm sure, for every company. So it's not like a school is unique, but that's just one kind of factor that's kind of nice. But so we got our lumber here, biggest order ever, and that's pretty cool. I'd say the absolute best 3 days of the year happen today, and that's the day where we're done with safety tests. Kids have passed out 100%. They've got their pledges in, signed by mom and dad, that's saying that they'll work safe, and now the time has come to actually do it. And so I have them run through the table saw first for their practice cuts with me. Only me, not even our volunteer, not with the principal, only me. Bobby Miller, you are running through the table saw first with me. I don't care that you did it with your uncle over the summer. I don't care that you've had my class before. We're doing this first time through with me, so I can remind you of all the things. I can remind you where your feet go, your hands go. I'm going to post a picture. I don't know if I'll do it today or tomorrow, of me working with some kids, and just so you can kind of see what that looks like. It's akin to anybody training somebody in on the table saw, but what's unique with kids is they've signed up for something that I don't think they fully grasp what's going on yet. And I've talked about kickback. I've showed them the saw stop cartridge video, but still, like, it's nerve-wracking for them, and I totally understand that. It's been a while, but I've been a teenager. I remember that first cut through the table saw. I remember how scared I was, but I also remember my teacher, John Almos, walking me through it hand over hand and being with me that entire time. And so that's exactly what I do to my students, and I see that anxiety drop significantly after that cut. And that is just it's the best part of my job, because I'm a parent, and I've got pre-K, I've got a toddler, and I got an infant. And the first time we put my 6-month-old in our baby swing in the back, and he's smiling and giggling like, how cool is that? And, it was only like a year ago, my 2-year-old was taking his first steps, and he's smiling just like my 6-month-old in the swing. And my daughter is big into dance class. She does a dance class, and she just ekes at the excitement of that. And these are all firsts that I get to be a part of as a parent. And I value that as a parent, obviously. But as a teacher now, I see that as like an opportunity that the parents missed. Maybe they missed, sadly. But I got to be there. And just as a parent myself, I see like how significant that is. And it's not like a 6-month-old in a swing that they're smiling, giggling, laughing until they're crying. But that subtle smile, that surge of confidence after they successfully cut on the table saw, it's second to none. It is not even close to anything else that I do in my job, and it's one after the other. So my whole day today, minus graphics, has been me taking kids through the table saw, and it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy it. I've done this now, probably thousands of students, and I've gotten to be the one, and so I'm just so grateful. There's this, camaraderie that kind of forms after that. They give a lot of trust, I think, when and some of the kids who are all, very scared but not saying it, I push them. I tell them where their hands got to go, their feet got to go. I don't, ask, are you okay? Do you want to breathe? Like, all right, and when you're ready, pull that red paddle back. That'll turn on the saw blade, and I wait until they do. And then I intentionally speak very softly and slowly. They can hear, obviously, because I got dust collection, kids playing, music going, and now the blade is spinning. But that's usually when all that head knowledge that they just learned from the safety tests that they got 100% on, all that head knowledge goes right out the window. That blade is spinning. My hand is on the board. Oh, my God. Miller is not going to do this for me, but he's right here. And I'm talking slow, like, all right, let's bring our right foot forward. Let's push the board tight to the fence. And just like you did before in our dry run, push that board all the way through the blade until it falls off the back of the saw. So they do that. Sometimes they do it at snail speed. And I typically, unless it's a big-time emergency, don't say a word through the cut because they're doing fine. All right, if they're doing fine, I'm not going to say anything to distract their attention. Sometimes if, they go through a knot or I don't know, something happens, but it's not a concern, they'll look up at me. But I make sure I've got my eyes on their piece, which is where their eyes should be, which they know because they passed the test. Their eyes go right back. They finish the cut. And then that's where that, oh, my gosh, all right. And I wish I could spend more time in that moment with them, but I've usually got 2 other students waiting for me at the other saws in our shop, and so I move on to the next one. They go on, they make their length cut, and then they go on to the next cuts, and so it's a really exciting thing, and so that's just a little bit more in depth of what that looks like. Now, thanks for staying with me. Please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Follow me on all my social media channels. Now, let's talk about weed in the wood shop. Let me grab a drink of water first. I am teaching graphics. I don't know, it was Monday or Tuesday. And so that class wraps up. I come back to the wood shop. That's where I office out of. That's where I teach most of my classes. And so I kind of live down here. And I open up my door, turn the lights on, and I sniff. And I'm like, oh my God. Someone's been smoking weed right here. And it's a distinct smell. If you've never smelt it, good for you. But it smells like a skunk, which we're in a suburb. Like, there shouldn't be a skunk anywhere in the wood shop. And I check all the normal areas or any good hiding spots. I check the lumber yard. I check our paint booth. Another teacher came in too, and he was like, whoa, what is that? And you know what it is, and it wasn't me. So help me find out where it is. And he's like, oh, let's check the trash cans. And we check all the trash cans, nothing. But there's been a change to the layout of our school, and I've got this room that used to be a storage room for the wood shop way back when. It's since been several different things, but my room wraps completely around it. And in the past, it's been a behavioral intervention room. It has been a special education meeting room. It belongs to the wood shop, in my opinion. It's here. It's got the same number. It's just a different letter on the end of the number. to say like, nope, this is actually a different room. And so I'm hopeful we get it back sometime. And I'm not actively trying to move this administrator out. In fact, I really like that it's been changed now to an assistant principal's office, because I've got the answers right there to my questions. And so I've even bothered him to help me move this piece. Or when we brought the panel saw in, I asked him to give me a help with some muscle moving it around. But I think maybe it's Schreiner. Maybe he's got something going on, and it's immediately right next to my door, right where I smelled it. And so I see he's on the phone. I wait a minute, knock on the door, and he opens the door and wafts the smell. And like, okay, that's what's going on. And I said, I just joking, we were buddies, and so I just jokingly say, you been smoking weed in here? And he's like, no, I confiscated some contraband, and it was a fresh acquisition. And so it was just being zipped up into a Ziploc baggie. It was the subject of the call that he was on. And so it was all right there, brand spanking new. And that's a concern too, because if, those students are around here and they're right by the woodshop with all this dangerous machinery. I've had kids too that I've suspected being high, and there's zero tolerance. You're not on machines. Okay, the admin brought you back here, and we're going to figure it out later. No, you're not on machines. If you are out of your mind right now, I don't care if you're safety certified, you've signed the safety pledge, you are my favorite kid. If I think that you are intoxicated, you're not using the machines. And so I'm a little bit sour on that. It's sad, too, that kids are partaking, and it's legal here in Minnesota now, which makes it even more difficult, but it's not legal until you're 21, so obviously this kid is getting a good write-up and parent call home, and it's all kinds of secrecy, data, rights stuff, so that's all I get to share about it, but that just kind of made kind of a fun little cap-off to the week. I'm grateful that it's pretty rare in here. In fact, the e-cigs are really even going away. In fact, when I taught up at Cambridge, they were really bad, but it was also kind of due to how my room was laid out. It was real easy for kids to kind of sneak around the corner and vape. I caught one kid one time blowing his cloud away with the wood he was holding because it was right then and there. I didn't see the exhale, but I saw what it produced. And I was like, okay, come with me. And that was kind of funny because an administrator and I actually chased him around the school because he tried to offload his e-cig to his buddy. And no. And then he went over to his locker. No. And he gets, at this point, he's running away. And he runs down the hall. And the admin, I haven't even called her yet, but she's at the end of the hallway, and she was fierce. She's since retired, Pam Osted up in Cambridge. But we corner this kid, and he's right outside the bathroom. And this is like my first year teaching up in Cambridge. And so we corner him outside the bathroom. He goes in the bathroom and tries to ditch it in the trash can. And I kind of I'm watching in what he's trying to do. But the admin, Pam, she's female, she rushes into the men's bathroom after him. So that was just like, oh my God, okay. But the kid made some really positive changes after that. And it's a good thing that he was caught. He got excoriated by mom and dad, as he should. And he changed his buddies. And it's a good thing. And so it's good when those things happen because they can be nipped in the bud, and it's not a AA life, or if it's even worse of that gateway stuff, so to worse. So I think that's about all I got left to talk about. Thanks for hanging in there. I think I'm just going to start releasing these podcasts on Friday because that's when it kind of works out for me to record them, and I don't see any reason for me to wait until Monday. I thought I'll just schedule them for Monday because that's when a lot of my favorite podcasts drop, but no, I'll release this afternoon, and if you listen to it, please reach out to me and message me that you listen to it because I can see the analytics, but I'm not a Google Analytic GA4 search engine optimization guy. So just reach out and say, hey, I listened to it. That was good. Funny about the story about the principal next to you or whatever you found interesting. Just I'm curious who's listening. I think this is a good thing. We're documenting a lot of really good stuff on this podcast. And if there's anything I can do to help, or if you've got any help here to offer, I'm open. I'm all ears. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast, Mr. Miller's Woodshop. I'm the same name everywhere. That's my email, mrmillerswoodshop@gmail.com. On Instagram, I'm Mr. Miller's Woodshop. On Twitter, Mr. Miller's Woodshop. Facebook, Mr. Miller's Woodshop. LinkedIn, I'm Bobby Miller. I'm going to use that professionally because who knows what other opportunities come up in the future. So I think if you search Mr. Miller's Woodshop in LinkedIn, you'll find me. But otherwise, just search Bobby Miller, BOBBYMILLER. So look forward to hearing from you and talk to you next week. Thank you all.